Good evening. On behalf of the commissioners and staff, I would like to welcome you to the July 25th, 2023 City of Roseville Public Utilities Commission meeting. The 7-member commission is responsible for studying and advising the City Council regarding all utilities owned or operated by the city, including electric, water, wastewater, and solid waste. The Public Utilities Commission advises the City Council regarding planning, rates, public information, cable television franchises, and other matters relating to such enterprises, and may also hear citizens' complaints as to operation or rates. The Public Utilities Commission also advises the City Council regarding the activities of such joint power agencies as the city may be a member of or which relate to such utility enterprises. At this time, I'd like to ask that everyone please put your electronic devices on silent. All right. First up, roll call. Commissioner Webb is excused from tonight's meeting. Pam, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bilski?
Here.
Commissioner DeLacy?
Here.
Commissioner DeMarkey?
Here.
Commissioner Maish?
Here.
Commissioner Springer? Here. And Chair Knox?
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Maish, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4 on the agenda is public comments. For this item is for anyone who would like to address the commission on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. When addressing the commission, please state your first and last name for the record. All right. Next, item 5.1 is the approval of the June 27th, 2023 meeting minutes. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Move approval.
Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right. Next on the agenda is requests and presentations. Item 6.1, selection of chair and vice chair. In accordance with the city's boards and commission administrative standards, the chair and vice chair shall be selected annually by the commission. The selected chair and vice chair will assume their positions at the next regular meeting in August. Could our legal counsel please walk us through the process?
Thanks, Chair Knox. So we are selecting a chair and a vice chair with this item, and we're going to take them separately. So we're only going to select the chair first, go through the whole process, motions, voting, everything, and then we will select the vice chair. So some of the rules of things just about the chair, anybody can be the chair. You can be the chair multiple years in a row. You can be the vice chair multiple years in a row. There's nothing stopping anybody. You can nominate others. You can self-nominate yourself if you're interested. And so what we'll do is we'll ask for nominations and then ask if there's anybody from the public that wants to comment on those nominations. And assuming there is none, since there's nobody out there right now, we will then go straight into somebody make a motion to appoint that person as chair. Somebody would second that motion, and then we would vote on the chair. And then after that, we would go through the whole process again for a vice chair. So all of that being said, anybody have any questions for me about how it would work? Okay. Then I would like to ask if anybody would like to nominate anyone else or nominate themselves for chair of the Public Utilities Commission for the next year.
I'll nominate Commissioner Webb for chair.
Okay. Anybody else that's interested in being the chair? Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on the nomination of Elaine Webb for chair of the PUC? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion to appoint Elaine Webb as the chair of the Public Utilities Commission?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second it.
Okay. Commissioner DeMarkey makes the motion and Commissioner DeLacy seconds the motion. And so, Pam, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bilski?
Aye.
Commissioner DeLacy?
Aye.
Commissioner DeMarkey?
Aye.
Commissioner Maish?
Aye.
Commissioner Springer? Aye. And Chair Knox?
Aye.
All right. So passes unanimously for now Chair Webb. And so now we'll move on to the vice chair position. So is there anybody that is interested in nominating anyone or themselves for the position of vice chair?
I would nominate Ed Bielski to be vice chair.
Okay. Any other nominations? Is there anybody from the public that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, does anybody want to make a motion to appoint Commissioner Bielski as vice chair?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner DeLacy and seconded by Chair Knox to appoint Commissioner Bielski as the Vice Chair of the PUC. Can we please call roll?
Commissioner Bielski,
Point of order, should I abstain?
You
if
do
I'm-
not have to abstain.
I don't have to abstain? Okay,
Correct.
aye.
Commissioner DeLacy. Aye. Commissioner DeMarkey,
Aye.
Commissioner Maish,
Aye.
Commissioner Springer. Aye. And Chair Knox.
Aye.
Okay, congratulations, Commissioner, and now Vice Chair Bielski. You guys will assume your positions at the next meeting, so Chair Knox, take it away for the next item. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your guidance, Joe. Item 6.2, Environmental Utilities Monthly Update. Report by Environmental Utilities Assistant Director Sean Bigley, summarizing the monthly status of environmental utilities activities for information.
All right. Well, good evening, Chair Knox and members of the commission, and welcome Commissioner Springer to the commission. I look forward to working with you. I'm Sean Bigley. I'm an Assistant Environmental Utilities Director. And tonight, I just want to give really just one quick update, a bit of good news relative to the city's water utility. So recently, we were advised by Standard & Poor's that our bond rating will be upgraded from a AA status to a AA plus status. And what they attributed the upgrade to were several factors, including the utility's low debt levels, a robust cash position, diversified water supplies, effective fiscal management, and a long-standing experienced management team. So we went through a interview process, provided some specific information relative to the standing of the water utility in various sort of aspects. And so we recently received that bit of good news from Standard & Poor's. And so with that, don't have any other updates for you tonight, but I just wanted to share that with you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Is there a proposed financing?
So basically, there's no additional new financing that we're looking at. So what they did is they examined our current certificates that are out there, as well as they looked at the WIFIA loan that we have outstanding as well. So those are the two areas that they really kind of focused in on. But certainly in the future, as you know, those ratings are really important in terms of really providing a lot more options for the city relative to seeking financing. So it's a good place for the utility to be.
Excellent news.
Yeah.
Negotiate lower rates, or is that they're fixed?
Well, I mean, conceivably, the rate is going to allow you to, look at those opportunities potentially. But yeah, certainly it puts you in a much better standing. I think it's indicative of giving investors an idea in terms of relative risk. And certainly with that kind of rating, it gives an idea that it's a very secure, stable utility that's worthy of investment through various sort of mechanisms. So, yep.
All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? All right, thank you for the update, Sean. Next, item 6.3, Environmental Utilities Water Utility Division Overview. Report by Water Utility Manager George Hansen with an overview of the water utility operations for information.
I just want to, you guys have, I think, been introduced to George. George is our water utility manager, and so tonight he's going to give you an overview. I think the other day I thought about this. I did this overview for 5 years, so now I pass it on to George, and George will give an overview in terms of where we're at this year. So, George, take it away.
All right, thank you, Sean. So I understand the media team made some edits to my presentation, and I believe the version you have in front of you is the edited version. Is that correct, Pam?
That is correct.
All right. Well, good evening, Chair Knox and members of the PUC. As Sean mentioned, I'm George Hansen, Water Utility Manager. My overview tonight, the first part of my overview discusses the people that make up the utility, the facilities and systems that we operate and maintain, the customers we support, and then I'll move on, discuss the mission and how that aligns with our priorities. And then we'll discuss a few implementation strategies and how we leverage those to support our core mission. Next slide, please. So here's an org chart of the organization. There are basically 5 functional areas that I oversee from left to right: the water treatment plant, the water distribution system, water efficiency program. Actually, Bobby Alvarez, the water efficiency manager was here at the last meeting and presented on our program last month. Also responsible for the engineering and hydrology program in the customer services group. And also would mention that the government relations group is housed within the water utility and supports all three utilities. So a quick overview of the facilities we own and operate. Roughly 100 million gallon per day water treatment plant is located in Granite Bay. That's where all the raw water from the Folsom Reservoir goes, is treated there and then conveyed to the distribution system. We maintain slightly over 700 miles of water mains, 5,600 plus hydrants, 8 water storage tanks that have a combined storage capacity of 48 million gallons, and pumping stations. The larger pumping stations are in pressure zone 2 and pressure zone 4. Those will be the dual-purpose pump station and the Westside Tanks pump station, respectively. We also manage an active groundwater well program and looking to expand our aquifer storage and recovery wells, and I'll discuss that in more detail further in my presentation. And then just to give you an idea of how our demands fluctuate during the year, the average summer demands are about 45 million gallons per day, and the average winter demands are 15 million gallons per day. So as you all know, Roseville is one of the fastest growing cities in the state. Last year, our growth rate was right around 1%, slightly higher than the statewide average of about 0.8%. So what that means for us in the water utilities, we really focus on tracking that growth rate well into the future, as well as understanding the activities that will occur in the infill areas regarding intensification so that we can adequately plan for water supply and also the infrastructure that's needed to support growth. So currently we have about 47,000 potable water connections, that's residential customers. That translates to a little over 150,000 residents that we support. And also a thriving business community, about 10,000 businesses in Roseville that provide close to 80,000 jobs in the city. Next slide. So that brings us to our mission and priorities. Our mission is pretty straightforward. We play a critically vital role in ensuring the health and safety of our customers and also supporting our business community. And so we do that by ensuring that the water we provide is safe and reliable. It's available 24/7. And so as part of our business operations, somewhere around 2020, 2021, we developed a strategic business plan. Essentially, that plan helped us refocus our implementation strategies and helped crystallize for us 5 priority focus areas that help us implement their mission. And I'll step through those later on in my presentation. So this business plan is aligned with the City Council's overarching priorities for the city. It gives us a strategy for addressing current and future challenges simultaneously, and also helps us utilize a hybrid approach for approaching what we do, using a Roseville-focused specific drive as well as regional collaboration and partnership with what we do to help facilitate our work. Next slide. So those 5 key areas that drive our work are water resource adequacy, infrastructure resiliency, customer satisfaction, investing in our team, and community and partner engagement. And I will discuss each of these as we go along. Next slide. So regarding water resource adequacy, so Roseville uses a diverse water supply portfolio, which is a combination of water supply contracts, groundwater wells, recycled water, and water conservation measures to allow us to support our customers' demands in all year types. So we have a 32,000 acre-feet water supply contract. It's a Central Valley project, or you hear us refer to that as a CVP water supply contract with the Bureau of Reclamation. We have a 34,000 acre-feet water supply contract with Placer County Water Agency. It's a Middle Fork Project water supply. And then I believe earlier this year in May, PCWN and Roseville concluded negotiations on amendments to our Middle Fork Project water supply. And so as part of those negotiations, Roseville has additional 10,000 acre-feet from that Middle Fork Project water supply that we can access via options. And so once we fully exercise those options, Meadow Fork project supply will be 44,000 acre-feet. In combination with the Bureau supply, that will put us at 76,000 acre-feet to support customers' demands through build-out. Also, ASR wells are part of a diverse portfolio, and I mentioned earlier we are looking to expand that, and I'll discuss that in the next couple of slides. So regarding infrastructure, we have a broad scope of infrastructure planning as part of our strategy to address water resource adequacy. Some of the near-term initiatives we are working on with PCWA is improving reliability and operational flexibility at a couple of the inner ties that we share with PCWA. So at a 5-star inner tie, we are doing equipment upgrades to replace some of the equipment, the flow meters, valves that are close to 30 years old, and also providing equipment there to automate that facility to allow us to operate it remotely. At the Tinker inner tie last year, we did some engineering studies and a lot of field work that provided us with very helpful data for both our organizations regarding how to operate those systems and the adjustments we need to make to increase water delivery through that inner tie in the event of a drought or some other emergency. On the long term, we're working on a couple of things. We're working currently on a 3-phase raw water pipeline project in partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers. What that will do is it will allow us to connect our treatment plant to PCWA's Foothill water treatment plant to allow us to access our Meadow Fork project water supplies directly from PCWA. Currently, the only way we can access that supply is to wheel it through the Folsom Reservoir, through a single intake point at the Folsom Reservoir, and we've had concerns with potential vulnerabilities with that intake, especially during drought events if there's a potential dead pool situation. So this will allow us to create a diversion point upstream of Folsom Reservoir to access those supplies. The funding mechanism is a 75-25% split, 75% from the federal government, 25% will be the local cost share. In fiscal year 22, I believe, we received an initial federal appropriations of $75,000. That was to cover the Army Corps' staff time. And then following that, we received a $21 million congressional authorization through the Water Development Resources Act, through Senator Padilla's efforts. And so this federal fiscal year, we put in a $5 million congressional appropriations request to begin the preliminary engineering work and the environmental work. And we're currently working with the Army Corps on the project partnership agreement. We anticipate we should have that wrapped up maybe in a couple of months, and we'll kick off the work thereafter. It's a really large project. We anticipate to be about a 10-year implementation period. Concurrently, we're exploring potential options with PCWA for treated water supply from the Ophir treatment plant. So that will require purchasing capacity in the future phase of the Ophir treatment plant, and concurrently building treated water conveyance to connect to Roseville system. So it's an option that we're exploring. On the regional front, we're working with San Juan Water District and the City of Folsom, exploring alternatives for addressing the potential vulnerabilities with that single intake point at the Folsom Reservoir. We're currently looking at a few alternatives that we hope to pursue with the Bureau of Reclamation. Next slide. The last item I'll mention regarding water resource adequacy is the ASR program. We just completed 2 wells in the western part of town, so currently we have a total of 7 ASR wells with a combined extraction capacity of right around 40 acre-feet per day. And so this year, we've been able to recharge the groundwater aquifer with close to 2,000 acre-feet with Section 215 water that we receive from the Bureau of Reclamation. And just for context, 2,000 acre-feet would provide a year's worth of water supply for about 5,500 to about 6,000 single-family homes. So our ASR program continues to be a very critical part of a diversified supply. When water is abundant, we'll bank it, and during dry years, we'll extract that water to supplement our surface water supply sources. Next slide. The next area of focus is infrastructure stability. I'll discuss this under two categories: treatment and distribution. So the treatment plant was originally built in 1971. We've expanded it three times since. It was a 12 MGD plant in 71. It's currently a 100 MGD facility. And so in anticipation of having to rehab and upgrade facilities that were built in that first phase, they are 50-plus years old. We conducted a couple of condition assessments in the last 5 to 7 years, and then used that information to develop a long-term rehabilitation and replacement program focused on the water treatment plant to replace aging assets as those occur. Similarly, for the distribution system, next slide, we went through a similar exercise, conducted a couple of condition assessments, and that was used to develop a long-term infrastructure rehabilitation and replacement program. Can we go back one slide, I think? There. And so those efforts have been ongoing. I believe in 2019, we started the refurbishment work in the older core neighborhoods of Roseville. The first project we did was in the Hillcrest area. We replaced about 20,000 feet of water mains, and we will continue to do a phased implementation of making improvements in those older parts of town as part of the long-term plan. Next slide. So the efforts I've described on the previous slides are regarding all the infrastructure that we have to upgrade. The other part of the discussion of infrastructure stability is expanding our conveyance system to support the growth that is occurring in Roseville, and we've been working on that for several years. So this is an example of one of those efforts. We kicked this effort off in the early 2000s, just completed this project last year. Is a West Side tank and pump station project. It comprises of two 6 million gallon tanks and a pumping facility, and it's to support growth on the west side of town. The second part of this project just kicked off this summer. It involves constructing a 6,000 square foot facility that will be a field office and maintenance workshop. Eventually, I think we should have that facility operational early part of next year. That will provide us with a satellite location in the west side of town for our water distribution staff to be able to mobilize and deploy staff from that location to support the growing community on the west side of town. Next slide. Next is community partnerships and engagement. So I've discussed some of this as I went through the presentation, so I'll just highlight a couple of things here. But there are a lot of agencies. These are just a few that we've highlighted here that we really appreciate all the regional collaboration that we're working on. So Placer County Water Agency, as I mentioned, we're working on a lot of joint efforts to facilitate sharing of resources between our organizations. I also mentioned City of Folsom and San Juan Water District working on alternatives to provide redundancy for the intake structure at the Folsom Reservoir. On the groundwater side, regarding Sustainable Groundwater and Management Act, SIGMA for short, obligations, Roseville being a member of the West Placer Groundwater Sustainability Agency, we're working with 4 other groundwater sustainability agencies that represent the North American Subbasin on a long-term groundwater sustainability plan to ensure that the groundwater basin is sustainable for the long term. And then also working with the Regional Water Authority on a lot of regional water banking efforts. Next slide. So customer satisfaction is something that we always thinking of how we can continue to serve our customers. And so on a bi-yearly basis, the department, our public information officer and his team conducts a customer survey. And so this slide here is a summary of the results regarding water service. The results have been about the same for the past few survey iterations. You see there in the 2021, I believe that survey was done in the latter part of 2021. About 480 customers were surveyed, and close to 90% of customers are either satisfied or highly satisfied with the water service they receive. So this is always helpful data for us. It shows areas where we can adjust and make improvements to better serve our customers. Next slide. And then investing in our team. So we have a team of highly motivated, very proficient professionals who just show a great sense of ownership. I've been in this role for less than 5 months, maybe about 4 months or so, and I can confidently say I'm extremely blown away by just the level of professionalism and proficiency that our staff work with. So that's really truly inspirational. However, there's a challenge that Renew was coming, and it's here, and we've been planning for it, and that is that we're facing a changing workforce, and I'm sure it's similar for many departments in the city. So employees that have been here 20, 30 years are getting to the end of their careers. They're carrying a significant amount of institutional knowledge, and as they get ready to transition out, we are onboarding, younger, less experienced staff. So it's an exciting time because there are lots of opportunities, but also very challenging. And so one of the things we've been doing is we have an in-house mentoring program and a job rotation program, and those two together have been structured to allow us to have the opportunity on a day-to-day basis, really, to partner the experienced 20-year, 30-year veterans who are carrying all this institutional knowledge with those that we're just onboarding to facilitate that knowledge sharing, because we know that that's something we need to continue to do. To continue to have and build for the next generation leadership, the next generation of water utility staff that will continue to be proficient and professional in the work that they do to support what we need to do for our customers. I believe this is the last slide, and with that, I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Do any commissioners have questions for staff at this time?
I do. Thank you, George. That was really very good. I was curious about Sigma. I had a question on Sigma, and so there've been a lot of new trees, a lot of it looked like almond trees, been planted within the groundwater basin, both in Placer and perhaps a bit into northern Sacramento County. I don't know, but I was just curious whether or not, off the top of your head, or maybe in a future, we could do a more in-depth update on this, but how has that increase in groundwater for ag affected the long-term stability of the groundwater basin? Can you?
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take it. Yeah. It's a great question. So as you all probably know, there's a groundwater sustainability agency. They're in the throes right now of actually starting to look at groundwater levels and kind of how groundwater levels are affected. And in terms of the GSA in the Western Placer area, I would say that the northern part of the county, as well as the county part of the county that is adjacent to Sutter County, obviously there's the ag use is much more intense. And, reasonably, you can expect groundwater usage to be much higher. Right now, they're in the process right now of looking at whether or not they are exceeding the minimum thresholds that are set for certain areas, and working through that data right now as we speak. And so what you're observing in terms of what's going on in terms of, orchards and other things that are coming through certainly do have an impact long term. And so the GSA is getting into the process of examining what that is, what the impacts are, and then how they go about mitigating those impacts and identifying who's going to mitigate those impacts.
It almost seemed like some of the San Joaquin Valley folks decided to move up here because we've got a good groundwater basin. Well, we had a good groundwater basin, and we want to keep it that way,
Yeah,
obviously.
absolutely.
So, all right,
Yep.
thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? All right, thank you for the report, George.
All right, thank you.
Next item, 6.4, Roseville Electric Utility Monthly Update. Report by Chief Executive Officer Dan Beans, summarizing the monthly status of electric utility activities for information.
Good evening, Chair Knox and Commissioners, and welcome, Commissioner Springer. So I'm Dan Beans, Director, CEO of Roseville Electric, and my update's going to be very brief. I just want to give you a little current update on supply chain. So since the day I walked in the door here over a year and a half ago, we've been fighting this fight specifically for distribution transformers on supply chain. We've done advocacy. We've worked with our manufacturers. We've gone to council, got sole source authority to chase other vendors, even outside this country, trying to do anything we can to get more transformers. Today, we have about half as many transformers spare for replacing for outages. So we are still going in the wrong direction. And the federal government is not moving very fast. The one thing that has happened is we have been successful in creating more awareness. There are a couple bills now that are trying to address this. Department of Energy, though, is not quite fully on our team. They put out a rulemaking to try to make transformers more efficient and to change how they're manufactured, even after industry sent them letters begging them to stop, to maybe even roll back the efficiency standards temporarily till the supply chain was fixed. So it's a big issue. It's a complicated issue. The electrification of the transportation system is going to complicate it, and I don't think it's going to get better, and for a while. The solutions take time. It takes time to get onshoring, manufacturing, and steel and all that. There's labor issues. There's a lot of issues. And distribution transformers are what's hitting us the hardest right now, especially since Roseville's growing as fast as it is. But it's kind of a proxy for the other components. So it's not just transformers, it's cable, it's a lot of things. So it's my top priority as the director. Industry-wide, we're doing anything and everything. We're involved in all the discussions. We're staying tight with the developers to make sure they're aware of what's going on. So anyway, more to come, but that's our big issue, and it's getting worse.
When we talked about this last year, we talked about the possibility that we might have to take what few transformers we have left and save them for repairing and replacing the existing distribution system transformers, which would mean stopping new service to development.
Right.
How close are we getting to that point?
We have a process in place where a developer can get on a waiting list for a transformer. And so, so far, we've had enough transformers trickle in over the last year and a half to keep us, well, it hasn't kept us whole because our stock for emergency replacement is about half of what it was. So we're bleeding out slowly. We do have to take care of our existing customers and maintain that. Last year would have been worse nationally, but we had kind of a mild hurricane season. If we have a normal hurricane season, it's going to get worse because the manufacturers will divert the product to the places that need it, so need it more urgently. So, yeah, we're there. We're at the point where having a little bit of a housing slowdown that was like in Roseville, like lasted like 5 minutes. That was, good for supply, but it's not lasting. Right. We're still growing, and it's going to get worse. So we'll be reaching out to council and to the developers and making sure everybody's aware of where we're at and what our options are.
I don't envy you. This is a highly political issue, and
Yeah. So far, we've not, I don't think we've denied anybody anything, but we are really, really tight. But we are talking to anybody who will listen and will trade. We'll do, we're trying to figure out how to get more. We're contacting manufacturers saying we need some emergency transformers. We are to that point, so.
Can many be rebuilt? Are there
We
restrictions?
we will rebuild whatever can be rebuilt, yes.
Are there cities that have not a surplus, but an abundance of transformers, maybe they aren't rebuilding, that might be a source?
Yeah, we nationally, there's a database, we've been kind of keeping track. The problem is everyone has some people have different systems. And because the supply is so tight and because you can't actually get a straight answer, like when you order something, when will I get it? Nobody is really willing to give you anything. I know, our neighbors at SMUD, they would help us out if we needed a transformer here and there, and we would do the same for them. But it's very, very tight. When people do mutual aid now, we send trucks and people, we usually cannot send equipment.
Well, this is a huge problem. Gonna be
It's a huge
massive.
problem. Yeah, our whole future economy is based on something that we're not controlling as a nation, so, yeah.
Now, with solar systems or solar, do you require the same type of equipment? Or is that their way of forcing solar?
No, you need a transformer regardless. So if you're going to have your house or business on the grid, your electric car charging, everything, you need a transformer. In my advocacy, we actually developed a brochure because I wasn't sure people in Washington actually knew what a transformer was or how it fits. So we drew them a picture and then showed them here, this is what it is, and these are all the things you now can't do because you don't have a transformer. And it's the government, certain parts of the government understand this is a national security issue. It's a really big deal, and it's not a quick solution. It's not toilet paper. This is a longer term, and it's going to take a lot of effort, so.
So I was reading, we were talking about us doubling population, but I was reading projected population from Antigua and Modesto, 200,000 people each, and they're PG&E land, right? So are we like David versus Goliath with competing with PG&E?
Yeah.
So I have a feeling they're the equivalent of Costco, so they can just go and buy up as many transformers as they want without any problem, whereas we're trying to buy them.
In our coalitions nationally, we're part of American Public Power Association. There's also the Co-op Association, and the investor owners are part of the Edison Electric Institute, and they're suffering as well. So this is across the board, all utilities, all types of utilities. But yeah, there is something to be said about buying power. I have other stories I could tell you, but.
That's tough. Yeah. Really tough.
PG&E can give money to politicians, whereas we can't.
No comment.
All right.
Strike that from the record if you want.
It's in there.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? All right, thank you for the updates, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, item 6.5, Roseville Electric Integrated Resource Plan update. Report on the Roseville Electric Integrated Resource Plan by Electric Resource Planner Brian Shinstock for information.
Good evening, Honorable Chair and Commissioner. I am Brian Shinstock. I'm one of the staff members working on the Integrated Resource Plan, and today I'll provide an update. Next slide, please. Integrated Resource Plan, commonly referred to IRP. It's a comprehensive planning document for our power supply side of the electric utility. It ensures we meet our utility's goals and regulatory requirements. And overall, it's just good utility practice to do. In accordance with Senate Bill 350, a utility the size of Roseville, we're required to do an IRP once every 5 years. Our last IRP was done in 2018, and we had many successes from the last IRP. We acquired a lot more capacity, which helps with reliability, nearly 100 megawatts. That was from new procurement, investments, and renewing contracts. another big takeaway is we entered the California Independent System Operators Energy Imbalance Market. That's a mouthful, but basically it's a market that we participate in now that has more liquidity to trade among other utilities more seamlessly. So when prices are low, we're able to buy at lower market prices, and when prices are high, we're able to utilize our generation and sell off at higher prices. So overall, it reduces our customers' cost. With this IRP, we've had a pretty extensive public engagement. We came to you guys in March of '22 and basically gave a background of what an IRP is, what we're doing, why we're doing it. And we've also had 2 public meetings, both in June of '22 and May of '23. And we've also reached out and asked our customers for a survey, and we tailored those survey results for our goals, which we'll get into a little bit in the next slides. So again, the IRP is a state requirement. And something new with this last IRP, Senate Bill 100 was passed, and that requires us to be 60% renewable energy by 2030, and the remainder to be carbon-free by 2045. So it's a pretty big shift of where we are today and where we need to be. And we took that into account with this new IRP. The planning horizon we looked at was 2023 to 2035, so 12 years is kind of that time frame we looked at. And knowing that Roseville is a city that's growing, customers are using energy differently. There's new technologies out there that are changing that as well. We wanted to be able to stay nimble. So something new that we looked at with this IRP was a few different load or demand scenarios. The first one being a normal. This is what our normal planning process is. It's everything that we expect will happen. Obviously, things change, so we wanted to have some gauge. So we did a lower demand as well. We looked at that. For instance, that includes customers using or procuring more energy efficiency so their homes are more efficient. That would also be ramping up even more rooftop solar for customers, and then taking into account a longer history of weather. So you have more mild summers, more mild winters. All that attributes to lower usage, which is you can see in the light blue line. And then in the contrary, we had a higher demand forecast. That includes more electric vehicles than what we assume to happen, more switching from gas to electric, and then a shorter history with weather patterns. So hotter summers, colder winters, all this drives usage. And then in addition, we also wanted to look at what happened if the state increases the renewable and carbon-free goals, because history's told us that happens every time. By the time we even reach our goal, the goalpost has moved, so we wanted to see what it would look like to be carbon-free by 2035, what that procurement would look like, what the cost would look like, and what the risk would be behind that as well. Next slide, please. So looking at the scope, there's quite a few resource options that you can look at. And what we really tried to do is we tried to limit those to ones that were well vetted with a history of performance. So as you can see up there, the resources that we looked at were hydro, solar, wind, geothermal, thermal, and storage. For hydro, just simply put, water spins a generator. That's what produces the electricity. One of the disadvantages to hydro is there's no real new sites being developed. Actually, some dams are actually being removed. A big advantage is it is controllable as long as you have the fuel source. You can move that generation around. You can also provide what's called ancillary services, which help with reliability. And hydro is carbon-free, and if it's below a certain amount, 30 megawatts, it is considered renewable. Solar, I think we're all pretty familiar with that, where the sunlight creates energy. The big advantage there is it can be sited nearly anywhere. Obviously, certain locations will generate better than others, but it's pretty plug and play. The disadvantage there, it only works when the sun's out. It's intermittent, and then it is renewable resource. Wind spins a generator. These are location dependent. You want to put the turbines close to to where the wind is, and they're also an intermittent resource where you can't necessarily control it. It only generates when the wind's there. This is also considered renewable. We have geothermal, where you use underground heat, and you send water down there. It creates steam. That's what's the energy source that spins the generator. There's few locations with this, so it is location dependent. An advantage is base load. Generally, when those are on, they stay on at full output, and they are renewable. Thermal is where fuel is ignited. It provides energy that then spins a generator. These can be sited nearly anywhere. They take up a very small footprint for the amount of power output they can do. They are controllable, but they are non-renewable. But there are possibilities of alternative fuel sources like hydrogen that can be renewable, which we're watching. And then finally, storage. The main one here is lithium-ion batteries. These only move energy from one time frame for another. They can be sited nearly anywhere. Again, they have a small footprint. They are controllable, but they're dependent on the state of charge. And they only, again, move energy, and of all the resources, they're one of the most expensive. Next slide, please. So continuing on with the scope, the combination of resources that we just went through, those make up a portfolio. We looked at 4 separate portfolios. 100% solar, so that's assuming all new procurement moving forward will just be solar. That would help meet the renewable mandates and carbon-free. Another portfolio we looked at is solar. This is where the majority of new resources are utility-scale solar, about 70% of the capacity, the remainder being wind, geothermal, and hydro. Wind, very similar, but here the majority of the resources are wind. And then finally, balanced. All new resources were balanced between intermittent, so solar and wind, and then the controllable resources, geo and hydro. Next slide, please. I talked a little bit earlier about the customer survey. We had 4 main goals, and these align with the goals of our utility and city council. And we asked our customers to rank reliability, affordability, and compliance, 1 through 3, what they thought the priority was. Can't rank all of them 1, but we did have a tie for reliability and affordability. They tied for first, and then compliance was tertiary. And for our industry reliability, we have like 4 main metrics that we can look at to make sure we are reliable. That is capacity. That's ensuring we have enough resources available to meet our peak with a safety factor. Energy. This is ensuring there's enough resources available to meet all times of the day, so 24/7. Flex ensures resources can adjust to the need. And diversity. This ensures the resource type and locations are diverse to limit impacts such as wildfire, transmission line outages, and then clouds and weather. Next, for affordability, we had 2 main metrics that we looked at, both cost and risk. Here for cost, we looked at ensuring the resource portfolio supports affordable rates, and then risk that the resource portfolio limits the risk from market variability. And there's quite a few things on the market that we need to try to limit. Obviously, electric prices, fuel prices, so in this case, natural gas, but then even resource adequacy. So sometimes we have to go to the market to buy capacity if we're short, and then compliance instruments like renewable energy credits and greenhouse gas allowances. For compliance, we looked at renewable energy and carbon-free energy. Both of these are ensuring that we meet those goals, but not necessarily exceeding them. Next slide, please. So using those metrics from the previous slide, each portfolio was compared, assessed, and scored. Scoring was done using sophisticated computer modeling that helped us look at kind of everything together and see what those metrics were. So at the top, again, we have our goals of reliability, affordability, and compliance, and underneath is each metric that I just covered. On the left, we have the portfolios that I talked about a little bit earlier, the 100% solar and wind, and then balanced. And what we're trying to do here is just between each other rank these on how they would perform. So for instance, the 100% solar, did not perform well for capacity and energy. The main reason here is when solar is producing, it's not when we need that energy. Our peak is later in the evening when solar tails off, and then even for energy, we would have to rely on the market quite a bit between the early evening or early morning ramp, and then we'd be over generating midday, and then we'd have to go out and buy to the market in the evening. So it's pretty important to have those resources match our load profiles. Overall, the balanced portfolio, although it didn't score the best in every single category, but as kind of as a whole, it did the best at meeting reliability, affordability, and compliance. Next slide, please. So that preferred plan for the technology and timing for the balanced portfolio is shown here. And our portfolio mix, I think the big takeaway here is going to look quite a bit different from today, because again, we have to meet those high renewable and carbon-free goals. We're anticipating right now, at least with all the assumptions built into it, that new capacity of 140 megawatts. So to give some context to that, that's about a third of our portfolio that we're going to have to procure to meet those goals. Another big takeaway is this plan helps inform how we're going to begin assessing resource investments and contracts. By selecting that plan, it informs decision-making, and it's a general path moving forward for the timing type and type of resource. We plan to issue solicitations in these timeframes, and it may look a little bit different going through it, but this is a good guide of where we need to go, so that this is kind of our roadmap for procurement. Next slide, please. In addition to just procuring resources, we had quite a few preliminary preferred plans also coming out of this, some things that we want to act on. We felt this would, again, better position the utility for today and into the future. That includes pursuing new and existing hydro. Hydro resources are important as they're controllable, flexible, renewable, or carbon-free. It's difficult to build new hydro in California, like I stated earlier, so there's fewer opportunities. So this is something that we have to watch a little closer. We also want to increase our import capacity so we can import more energy into the city. This provides more options, and generally we can move or purchase more green energy coming into the city. We want to maintain and pursue new development in our existing system to account for the increased, more volatile loads. One of the risks that we have is the PG&E transportation gas rate that we have to pay to get the gas to our plants. That's subject to PG&E's cost and rates. So we want to keep working with our partners and engaging in forums to help keep that price low. We also want to use AMI data to assess new programs and develop a broader load reduction program. Next slide, please. The future continues to evolve. Therefore, our goals that we want to monitor is continue to monitor the state and federal legislation and regulation. We want to optimize our capacity and renewable position. We want to help meet compliance by monitoring new green or low emission fuel sources for our existing infrastructure and thermal assets. We want to work with our partners to ensure access to markets that maximize portfolio benefits, like I talked about earlier with the energy and balance market. Next slide. In addition, we want to explore a few things as well. We want to continue assessing analytical methods and market instruments to manage risk optimally and affordably. We want to see those tools and be able to make better informed decisions. We want to align our hedge strategy with increasing exposure to carbon and other environmental markets. We want to research and explore opportunities to increase transmission to the Pacific Northwest. And finally, monitor system requirements and intermittency and implement a storage solution at the appropriate time. And the big thing there, again, is storage right now is expensive. The cost curves are expected to come down, but we want to make sure, we procure that when it's needed. So doing all three things, we feel this will best position Roseville Electric today and into the future. And as a reminder, this is just a planning document. Any procurement will be brought before council for approval. And then the final slide, next steps. We want to present this plan to council in the fall, submit to the California Energy Commission by the end of this year, and then from there begin implementing the preferred plan, and finally monitor and update for any future changes. With that, are there any questions?
I had a question. Would we look into like solar farms and with the like joint with the county that border us or anything like that to try to?
You're probably specifically talking about the SMUD Country Acres project.
Yeah, that comes to mind.
Yeah, we've been in discussions with SMUD, and we've been following that pretty closely. So it's an opportunity, but we're weighing that opportunity with what else is on the market and when we need stuff. So to answer your question, yes.
And where would you put fans or the wind turbines? West
That-
Park?
Luckily, we don't have much wind here, so that's basically in the Pacific Northwest or
Okay.
even on the coast and stuff. We do have transmission to the Pacific Northwest right now that we could utilize to bring that home. If there were other areas, transmission legs, we'd have to look into how to bring that to us.
Is there much future opportunities for geothermal? I imagine that would be pretty limited in the state.
I think there are. There's new technologies that use geothermal a little bit differently. I think the sites that are out there now probably have the best heat source, but there are new projects, and we have seen new projects come up. There was one just last year that was solicited, so, but fewer than solar and wind.
Right.
So I had a follow-up question on that. I think geothermal, I think the geysers, and the geysers runs 24/7, and it's reliable. So I kind of got the inference through this that there's possible technology where we could inject water down into the earth to a hot spot and then create geothermal that way, create our own kind of source, or am I off the...
That's basically how geothermal works. You have a heat source low, and then it shoots water down, and then that water creates the steam, and then the steam's captured and put through a turbine. So that's in essence how the geothermal
I'm thinking nearby
works.
there's less and there's activity up there. Is that a possible source, or we don't know? It's kind of...
It's probably a little protected over there, my guess. Yeah.
And then Commissioner DeLacy and I, when we toured the plant, we talked about, of course, we're old enough to remember, we talked about nukes, and the technology's now changed, and albeit we have the Oppenheimer movie, but is there anything to consider, some form of, maybe change the name, nuclear technology? Because, the stuff that was built back in the day, that's, 50, 60 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, the new technology is called small modular reactors.
Right.
And the federal government spent millions and millions at the labs doing research. There's probably, a dozen different companies that are working on solutions. I think the first ones that'll come to market will be in late 2020s, 2028, 2029. There's definitely an interest in that. California, I believe, has some rules about nuclear that would probably prohibit it from being sited here, even though it would be an excellent energy-dense, clean resource for California. But it's that mission, and I don't know, California does things with laws too, where they don't even want you importing things. So anyway, it'll be interesting. The rest of the country might enjoy some good nuclear technology. I don't know if California ever will.
So I was surprised to see on your plan, on the preliminary plan, that the first step for increasing was solar. And I thought you gave a good explanation that solar is, there's an excess amount of solar in the system currently. You get negative prices sometimes during the middle of the day. Solar generators get cut off, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you need it, of course, it's not there. That's what's driving the problem now. So why would you prioritized in the preliminary plan, your first step of increasing generation would be a solar project?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we've been following some projects, and right now, just kind of looking at the trajectory of where we need to be. Gas is still viable right now in this whole plan. So if you're front loading some of those renewables where you can have it earlier, while you can back it up with the gas generator, definitely helps, because you can smooth out that production. So that was kind of one of the strategies we looked at of doing it earlier.
And maybe later the storage costs will be down, so then you could back it up with storage at a later date. Plus, you look at current opportunities locally that are working out, so there might be it's probably faster to market to production to do solar than the others.
So this is a case of solar's cheap, and so you can, in theory, meet your requirements buying solar, but in reality, you've got gas generation in order to make sure that it works. I got it, okay.
Well, eventually, gas generation could turn to hydrogen use, even using natural gas as a base fuel.
Mm-hmm.
That's real viable.
Yeah, and there's other technology being chased, like carbon sequestration and various things. So, the awkward part is California's moving really fast, and it's faster than technology and faster than people can afford it at this point.
All right, is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? All right, thank you for the updates, Brian. Next on the agenda is board member, commissioner, or staff reports. Are there any reports from the staff? Question or comments from the commission? Does anyone have any items that they would like to suggest for future meetings? All right. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, we are adjourned.
All right.